And so if you have ever dated someone who seemed like they were interested, but for some reason you're sort of left with this nagging doubt about how much they actually really dig you, or maybe they initiate just enough contact to be polite and sustain that connection, but not quite enough to trust the butterflies in your stomach, right? Or maybe they don't respond right away to your text messages, but they do eventually respond, and with a perfectly reasonable reply. Maybe they show you some physical affection, but they appear shy of going all the way. Or maybe you have gone all the way, but nothing else in the relationship seems to have changed as a result of it, or deepened as a result of it. And so maybe they make time for you once or twice a week, but you can't tell if that's because they're excited to see you or they just don't have anything else going on and they find you companionable enough. Or maybe you're an open heart. And I would say open hearts especially would be confused by behavior like this, probably because they're used to stars and fireworks at the beginning of a relationship. But if you're convinced that, maybe at this time you are convinced that you want to slow down, and maybe you want to try this slow and steady approach to dating. And however, it is hard to know where you stand when you start trying that out, because it may feel to you like it's like lukewarm behavior, right? And you might even wonder if this potential lover that you've been seeing has more of an avoidant attachment style, what I call a rolling stone. And maybe they're just afraid to commit, or they're just withholding their deeper feelings. And so if that sounds familiar to you, or you are familiar with this kind of dynamic, you're going to want to stick around for us during this video segment, because I'm going to highlight 4 myths and what I think of as false premises that underlie this kind of question and suggest a way to navigate your way through it. And so the question is, are they avoidant, or are they just not that into me? Okay. So if you don't know me, my name is Brianna McWilliam, and I'm an author, educator, and licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist. I've been in the field for about 13 years now, and I am just wild about helping individuals with insecure attachment go from feeling lost and fearful and confused in their relationships to stepping into what I call their self-sovereignty and calling in those soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want. And without having to talk in circles about their feelings for hours or even years on end with no tangible result. And I do this using a psycho-spiritual approach to implementing creative arts interventions through the framework of attachment theory. And my method has 3 steps to it. That is cognitive reframing, body activation, and arts-based experiential. So let's dive into our topic for today. And this topic was inspired specifically by a question that was posted in my online community. I've been seeing someone for a few weeks now, and we've hung out at least once or twice a week. He keeps scheduling more dates with me, but things have not progressed as quickly as I'm used to. We've kissed with heavy petting a few times, but nothing more. It's pretty balanced with who initiates contact, and he seems responsive, though sometimes he'll take a while to reply to a text. I really like him, but I can't tell if maybe he's avoidant or perhaps he's just not that into me. Advice, please. So again, I've broken down my response into 4 myths or false premises that underlie the posing of a question like this itself. And I'm hoping that I can offer you a reframe or a quote unquote truth to counter it. And that's going to help you kind of navigate this experience if you feel like it applies to you. So the first sort of myth or false premises is that you can tell how much someone likes you or doesn't like you based on behaviors related to attachment styles specifically. Okay. But the truth is that attachment styles cannot always help you with this, because you could have someone with any type of insecure attachment style just not be that into somebody. So anxious people cling to partners that they're really not into all the time because it's the nature of their attachment style, which is to make it work. Because their essential fears are survival fears, which means that they are often confusing love with separation anxiety. Okay. And avoidant individuals may entertain more casual relationships because that's how they get their needs met without sacrificing too much or risking too much, which means that they might actually be more likely to commit to someone that they are not all that into, because it reduces the chance of feeling emotionally threatened or losing control. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2. Okay, second myth we've got going on here. You'll know right away if you are into someone and if there's a future there. Okay, the truth is Sometimes yes, but sometimes no. Every relationship starts off with some ambivalence because you are feeling each other out. You have to allow for that. Relationships of substance take time, and you should, to some degree, be holding back a little bit until you know that it is safe to proceed and that it is something that you actually want to proceed with. So remember, there's often a lot of fantasy, desire, and expectation that we bring to our dating experiences from the get-go. And when we are able to immediately identify some of the traits in our ideal partner, we feel lit up, right? But remember, most of us put on a top-notch performance in the beginning. It's natural. That's not like the result of an attachment style. That's something that we just all do. We want to impress and to be impressed. But some people are a bit more, let's say, parsimonious with their attractive qualities. And in those cases, it can be a delightful surprise with time to discover them. And so those are the types of relationships that grow in quality and substance over time, kind of like a fine wine. And so often we think relationships are supposed to hit us like lightning. But what if part of your lesson here on earth is to learn about the kind of love that actually grows slowly? Okay. So now the third myth here is that if someone doesn't want to commit to a serious relationship, they won't want to spend time with me anymore, and or they won't want to sleep with me. And if they do sleep with me, they're just denying their true feelings, and or they're just using me for sex. Okay. But here's the truth about that. A person can say, I like you, but I'm not sure I want what you're looking for. And then continue to be nice to you because people are nice to each other and they're not always looking for an angle to use and abuse you. So just because someone doesn't want to have a committed relationship with somebody doesn't mean that they can't enjoy and respect that person for who and what they are and want to spend time with them without wanting to commit themselves in a deeply intimate romantic relationship. So you're an attractive person. Why wouldn't they want to have fun, companionable sex with you? Why wouldn't you both get some enjoyment out of that activity without the weight of a long-term commitment hanging over your heads? Why wouldn't they assume that you would get just as much pleasure out of that arrangement as they would? Now, that still doesn't mean that deep down they want to get married and have babies, okay? So this is the extreme perspective that individuals with insecure attachment typically have. Well, I have enough friends. I have no use for you otherwise. Because they tend to, and I'll say rather defensively, react this way when they don't get what they want, and they think that others hold the same sentiment towards them. And so if a person finds you attractive, but in their own experience doesn't want what you want, or read the situation in the way that you read it, you tend to feel, unfortunately, devalued, rejected, negated, and even shamed or embarrassed. And so on an unconscious level, that feels like a threat of emotional and psychological death. So your primitive attachment system lights up and your survival tactics kick in the limbic brain, your survival tactics kick in, and that usually means turning that person into some kind of villain who must hate you and or is trying to use you because your experience of love has been so conditional up until this point. And so that way you can better survive by safely hating them back in a sort of kill or be killed kind of way, or you try even harder to get them to love you. And so we think if someone doesn't express themselves as all in this way or all out, they are trying to manipulate us. And that's because we have a lot of boundary confusion. We don't understand affection as expressed in shades of gray. But it could be that they're actually secure and they just simply mean what they say. And you don't have to try to figure something out because you want it to suit your agenda. Okay. And so in these instances, however, especially if casual sex is involved, you have to be crystal clear on what that means to you and what it means or does not mean to your partner. You have to be super, super honest with yourself, above all, about what is your emotional boundary when it comes to sex, and not abandon those boundaries, and also not judge yourself for them either. Okay. Now, the last one, false premises and myth, is that you should feel out your partner's level of investment before deciding what it is that you want to invest. Okay. Now, the truth is, it's always best to decide what you want first, whether or not you choose to act on it. So at least decide so that you know for yourself. Okay. And of course, there's plenty of time for you to have some ambivalence about what you want. As I said before, that's the natural thing that happens in the beginning of relationships. You don't have to know right away. But if you have reached a place where you're like, oh, I'm realizing I do want this out of the relationship, decide that for yourself and know where you stand in that position before trying to suss out what the partner's experience is. So when we fall into a trap of waiting for someone else to set the tone of the relationship, as if waiting for them to grant you permission to feel your feelings, you become subject to the conditions around you and the whims of your partner. And so oftentimes your partner doesn't want that kind of power over you. And it's likely that they are waiting for you to take a stronger stance in what you want as well. And so if you see your partner as wishy-washy and you're waiting around for them to make up their mind before you can make up your mind, recognize that you are being equally as wishy-washy. Okay? And so in deciding and stating what you want, you are defining a boundary, and it forces your partner to define their boundary as well in response to it. And once those boundaries become clear, you can actually see a path to what you really want, because it all becomes so much more discernible. And that is it with this person or not? Okay. Or maybe it's too soon to tell, or maybe there needs to be more time to figure that out, but you'll know better which path to take. Okay. Or at least the next step in the relationship evolution becomes clear. And I would advise that sometimes after you state your desire and intention, you have to give that seed a little bit of time to germinate, right? You have to give it a little bit of time to take root without needing instant reassurance of an immediate response to feel gratified, okay? Because it's a mechanism of the same thing. I need gratification from you now to be sure that that's what I want. Be sure of what you want first, okay? And now you can, to some extent, observe how a person's attachment style emerges in response to you taking a stance like this. And I would add also the language that you use and the way in which you express your desires is really important. So there's a difference between saying something like, we've been dating for 3 months and I want to make things exclusive. I need to know that this is going somewhere. Okay. As opposed to, we've been dating for 3 months and I have been really enjoying our time together. I feel myself opening up to you more and more every day, and whatever the possibilities might be for us. Lately, I found myself fantasizing about exclusivity and wondering what that might be like. I think it's something I'd be willing and wanting to explore with you, and I'm just wondering what thoughts you might have about it. How do you know when you feel like you'd want to be exclusive with someone? Open it up like a dialogue. Be curious, okay? But still stating where you're at, okay? Not demanding an outcome that really you can't predict at this point. Now, the former suggests a pre-existing script or agenda is driving the bus, right? And it makes a partner feel like you've got some kind of existing template that you're just trying to cram them into. And so it's not actually about you and the partner and the thing that's evolving between you, but it's about some agenda that you have, okay? But the latter is really more of a genuine, emotionally sincere statement. And it opens up the conversation for dialogue. And that allows for a co-creation of what the possibilities might be. Now, oftentimes an open heart will respond quite positively to a suggestion of exclusivity, usually. And because of that, however, it might flip a switch inside them, which all of a sudden heaps a ton of expectations onto the relationship and their partner about what exclusivity actually means to them. Okay. So if you feel like we decided on exclusivity and now they seem to be backing away, well, you also have to ask yourself, what does exclusivity mean to you? And how are you responding to that shift in the label of the relationship, right? Now, a Rolling Stone might respond in one of two ways. First, they might slow their roll and express something along the lines of wanting to keep their options open or not wanting to ruin the relationship by labeling it. They may assume your expression of deepening intimacy is a sign that you are encroaching on an area that they are not willing to go, and perhaps now they think you're a certified mismatch. So in other words, they might retreat when you say something like that. And isn't that really good information for you? Now, on the other hand, they might express not being ready for a deeper commitment, but they respect your emotional honesty because they haven't gotten a lot of that in their experience. And while the automatic no is probably their first response, it is possible that you have just planted a seed. And over time, they will be checking in on that seed to see if it is consistent and if they can trust it to grow. And if you can be consistently honest about your feelings without demanding more from them than what they are able and or willing to give at any given time before they are willing and able to give it, then it is possible for a rolling stone to come around. And so open hearts want romance and fireworks and the pink fuzzy perfume of connectedness, and they usually want it pretty immediately. And just a whiff of it is enough to secure their buy-in. Now, rolling stones want that too. They do. They want it too. And they can become infatuated just as quickly. But for a long-term commitment, they need to read every consumer report before they are willing to buy the whole enchilada, right? So in summary, truth number one, you could have someone with any type of insecure attachment style just not being that into somebody. Anxious people cling to partners all the time that they are not really that into, and avoidant individuals may commit to someone they are not that into because it reduces the chance of feeling emotionally threatened or of losing control. Okay. Truth number two, every relationship starts off with some level of ambivalence because you are feeling each other out, and that is a healthy and secure thing. Truth number three, if someone doesn't want to commit to a serious relationship, it doesn't mean that they won't want to spend time with you or even sleep with you. And it doesn't mean that they are hiding some kind of deeper feeling from you or just using you for sex. They may just be able to enjoy the human interaction on a less emotionally intimate and committed level, and they assume that you can too. Okay. Truth number four, it is always best to decide what you want first, whether or not you choose to act on it. At least decide so that you know for yourself. So when we fall into the trap of waiting for someone else to set the tone of the relationship, as if waiting for them to give you permission to feel your feelings, you become subject to the conditions around you and, again, the whims of your partner. So then the relationship becomes confusing and wishy-washy, and it leads us to ask questions like, are they avoidant or just not that into me? Okay. So I hope you enjoyed this particular segment. And if you want to get more feedback, content like this, feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell, and you'll be notified of when I post videos again. And if you would like to post questions in the feed, even if you're watching this on the replay, when I come back tomorrow after we deliver some new content, I will be tackling some of the questions that were raised in the live streams, as well as any of the videos that I've released since the beginning of the month. So usually I release 2 videos a week for the first 2.5 weeks of the month, and then I do a 3-part live stream series towards the end of the month. So kind of like a course, like give you some information, digest the information, then we come together to process it on the live streams.